Minister Patricia De Lille, who's currently speaking on the opportunities within tourism, specifically, of course, focused on the upcoming G20. Let's listen in.
Today's exercise is to say to ourselves, now, how do we get there? So I'm very pleased with the discussions this morning, and we continue on later on. And unfortunately, as we know, when flying, turbulence can hit. And I want to address some of the recent developments at South African tourism. Last week, Friday, I appointed and gazetted 6 people with the necessary knowledge and qualification to handle the affairs at South African tourism. They will be acting in the interim while I do start the process to appoint a new board. And there is provision for this in the Tourism Act. I did have an introductory meeting on Friday with the group led by Dr. Masito, and we will soon meet again towards the end of the week to get into the substance and the priorities and the task awaiting on them. So I want to put it on record that the South African Tourism CEO remains suspended following the decision by the former board. I have noted media reports that I'm protecting the CEO, for which I vehemently deny because it's not true. I've also been accused of political interference in the tourism board and in the affairs of the South African Tourism Board. And I always say to people that, well, you are entitled to your opinion, but you're certainly not entitled to your own facts. I have got no problem with the decision to investigate the allegations of misconduct against the South African Tourism CEO. My decision to dissolve the board is based on legal advice by senior counsel, and because I have warned the board before. And I will get into those details. So this is no just wake up one morning and decide to dissolve the board. Now, the board had no chairperson on the 1st of August 2025 because the previous chairperson, Professor Gregory Davids, resigned on the 31st of July. And within a couple of hours after his resignation, and the board had no chairperson, on the 1st of August, the board then implemented a round-robin resolution. Now, I know they are claiming there was no meeting on the 1st of August, but I'm referring to the resolution that came out of the meeting of the 1st of August. And the decision was that the board then decided to appoint a representative of the board to continue to have meetings. There is no such terminology in the Act of a representative of the board. The Act is very clear that it's up to the minister to appoint an acting chair, which they should have asked me to do, or appoint a chairperson and a deputy chairperson. So the Tourism Act is also clear, and so is the board charter. There's a board charter that was adopted in April 2024 by the board. No special meetings or round-robin resolution can be done without a chairperson. Those are the rules and the laws. So on the 4th of July, I cautioned the board on their failure to follow governance procedures, which undermines the integrity of the board, and it could also render the outcomes or the decisions of such meetings procedurally invalid and unlawful. So some people might think that procedures is not important. But if it's prescribed in law, then we all subject to the same law. Now, we are turning the tide, and we are now focused on growing the tourism sector together with the private sector, because government cannot do it alone, and that is what we are discussing today. We are grateful for the support from the Tourism Business Council. We're grateful for the support from FEDASA and other sector bodies within tourism, that we have all decided, let's continue, and let's continue to implement the important work of the Tourism Growth Partnership Plan. I think I will stop there and then deal with questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. So we're going to have our first round of questions, colleagues. So you can just put up your hand, name, surname, as well as the organization that you're from, and then your question. We're going to start off on this side.
Can I go? Yeah. Dozo Kumalo from Newsroom Africa. Board issues at SA Tourism is not something new. We've heard stories around board issues. To ensure that we really do meet the points and the mandates of this execution lab, and that there is that governance, how are we then resolving these issues? Because I think even when CEO Khumalo was a few years ago, it was similar issues, meetings being had without the minister being consulted, that kind of thing. How do we get to the root issues to ensure that we do really meet these targets that the department has set itself? Thank you.
Okay, next one.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. Minister Tsuro from KAIFM. Minister, you have really emphasized the importance of really growing the tourism sector. How soon or how urgent is it for you to appoint a permanent board, considering the fact that we could say we have lost at least majority of the year? We're left with 4 years, maybe 4 months now before we get to that cut-off date, or rather the date that you've put down as deadline for all of these targets that you've put.
Okay.
Slila Ramasilani from ENCA. Minister, this is the board that you appointed following the dissolution of the board of Tottenham Hotspurs. Some would say that perhaps the issue is with you, and the fact that you made the wrong decision in appointing this board in the first place. You've been accused of being a dictator. You're accused of perhaps not allowing this board to actually function independently. Can you please respond? Thank you.
Okay, let me start with the first question. My advice to all the board members has always been, and I did the same with the board that is being appointed for the interim basis now. I said, please familiarize yourself with the following documents. The one, you must understand your role and your mandate in terms of the Tourism Act of 2014. But that needs to be read together with your role and function defined in a board charter. It must also be read together with the Public Finance Management Act. It must also be read together with King IV principles. And this is what I've done now with the board now. Now, if along the way they stray and they don't follow the prescribed laws and regulations, then I have to act. Now, you will say, or I will say, that I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. I can't help if you find people who are not adhering to what is in the law. My role and the oath of office that I've taken is to uphold the Constitution. So that is the advice that I've even started to give this board now. Also, in terms of the permanent board, the process is as follows. I will prepare an advertisement. That advertisement must then run for, I think, two to 3 weeks. Thereafter, we will do the shortlisting. Then thereafter, we will also do interviews. And then there's a compliance issue. That before I can take that board to cabinet for approval, because it's only cabinet that can approve the board, I must ensure that that board reflects the demographics of our country. It reflects the gender balance of our country. It reflects also to have youth representatives in there. So I must also look at the age profile. And then if I get to cabinet and it's not compliant with the composition as prescribed by cabinet, they send you back to go and make sure. So once we have done all of this, I will then take it to cabinet for concurrence. Even with cabinet, there's a cabinet cycle. So you have to introduce your recommendation first to the Economic Cluster Cabinet Committee. They will then scrutinize the board before the Economic Cluster Cabinet Committee make a recommendation to Cabinet. So that is the process that we will start soon. And the absence of the board will have no impact on our targets. This sector is not dependent on individuals alone. It's not even dependent on whether there's a minister or not. It is dependent on that the number of arrivals in our country and the number of people that travel domestically, that is what is contributing to economic growth and to job creation. The summer season has just started, or is beginning to start now, in September. Last week at Zoo Lake, we launched the September Tourism Month. What also sits in the month of September, that's not dependent on a board or not, but on the sector, public sector and private sector, is that on the 9th and the 10th, we are having, for the first time, an inaugural Tourism Infrastructure Investment Summit with all the G20 countries that will be visiting South Africa. On the 12th of September, we will be having the G20 ministerial meeting in Skakuza in the Kruger National Park. Also, in the month of September, we have also done a hackathon to involve young people into the G20 legacy projects. And we've partnered with 18 higher learning institutions. And as we speak, those young people are busy designing solutions for the future. So all of this work will go on because government cannot do it alone. We rely on our partners to do so. And of course, the targets of the Growth Partnership Plan, like we are discussing this morning, we will continue to implement it. You know, some people are saying I'm a dictator. I'm a smiling dictator if it comes to the law, because we've got no option, my sister. We are all subject to the law. We are all equal before the law. Nobody is above the law. So yes, if you say I'm a dictator that want to implement the law, I've got no problem with that. But to say that I am interfering in the board matters, there's a difference between interference and intervening. When I see something is wrong, I will intervene, like I have done on the 4th of July in my quarterly meeting with the board. And the issues that we discussed in the meeting of the 4th of July, I raised concerns with the board about the implementation of the SIU recommendations that deals with serious corruption. The board received the report early in April of 2025. By the 4th of July, they have still not implemented what the SIU has recommended should be done. Worst of all, in that meeting, they claimed that they haven't even received the report. In the meeting, the chairperson could confirm that every single board member received that report. So I discussed that with them, and I said, I expect the board to clarify this discrepancy that they didn't receive it, and they must respond to me in writing. Because what the board was to consider from the SIU is declaring delinquency of the previous board members in terms of the law, in terms of the SIU. That's one issue. The second issue, and this is not interference, this is intervening because they must do their work. The second issue, on the 10th of June, on which I was copied in, the CEO raised with the board a number of issues of concern that need to be dealt with. Then, and those issues, and I will just mention a few of them. One, there was the investigations into the Cape Town Jazz Festival, where there was an overspend. There was also some overspend in the marketing mandate of SAT. And I said to them, please finalize this as soon as possible. Now it's July, and this was raised with them in June. Nothing was done. Then on the specific issue that we are dealing with now, on the issue of board governance and clear outcomes. It has come to my attention then that special meetings and ordinary board meetings are being called without due process being followed. The Act stipulates that the board must meet at least 4 times a year. And when they met on the 31st of July, it was such a meeting. If you want to call a special meeting, then you have to follow due process. The chairperson must write to all the board members for a special meeting. need to justify and motivate the urgency of the meeting. And then when 2/3 of the board members agree to a special meeting, then you can have a special meeting. And I raised my concerns because I could see the number of meetings being held. Another process issue that I raised with the board was that the board has got subcommittees chaired by a board member. So the subcommittees meet separately, and then they go and make recommendations to the full board. The board will then take a resolution, and that board decision will be communicated in writing to the administration what to do in writing. When the administration started saying to the board members, but you can't call me today and that can't call me today, give me the resolution, that was also one of the governance issues that I've raised. Because my concern was that if you don't follow due process, that this undermines the integrity of the board and render any outcomes from such meetings procedurally invalid. That is what the laws say. That's not what the minister is saying. And then moreover, the absence of properly constituted meetings with clear resolutions and follow-through is unacceptable. I raised this with them on the 4th of July. Then the other issue I discussed with them is the correspondence between the board and the CEO and the management of SAT, and just reminded them what the procedures are and how it needs to be done in terms of the PFMA. I also raised the issue with them because the Auditor General wrote to me and says, Minister, you must ensure that SAT, as a matter of urgency, employ a permanent CFO. SAT don't have a CFO, a Chief Financial Officer. SAT also don't have a head of internal auditing. So those issues are raised by the AG. I had to intervene because it was raised with me. And up till today, as we speak, there's still no CFO, there is still no head of internal audit. Because the board has rejected twice recommendations from an independent panel who to appoint. Lastly, on the issue of the CEO, I reported to the board that the board has consulted with me, and I said to the board that all the information that they have provided to me, I have shared with Minister Buthelezi to help me to provide me with that legal advice. And as soon as I receive that, I will report back to them. The last issue I raised with them regarding the company secretary, I was very upset about this. Because the company secretary has raised 2 grievances already. 2 grievances the company secretary raised. Now that's unfair labor practice. They have got procedures within a certain time frame. You must do this. You must bring an independent panel together. And I asked them to deal with the issue of the company secretary immediately. In fact, I said to the CEO who was in that meeting, I said, you must ensure that these processes are started immediately. Which shows you are not protecting the CEO. In this instance, I said to the CEO that certainly this is not acceptable. Lastly, I didn't threaten them here, but what I did say in closing, I said to the board, I trust that the board fully appreciate the seriousness and the urgencies of this matter. And I said, should all outstanding issues not be fully addressed within the required time frame of 7 working days from the date of this letter, I will have no choice but to report this to the Portfolio Committee of Tourism about the inability to provide timely and comprehensive responses, and when necessary, make these issues public. And I said the continued lack of clarity in action is untenable and compromises the integrity of South African tourism and the government expectations. That's why I am very happy that the Portfolio Committee has asked me to appear before them on the 2nd of September, so that I can put all the facts to the Portfolio Committee, because they have got oversight over the executive. And then all of these issues can also be made public, because the Portfolio Committee is public. I'm happy about being summoned by the Portfolio Committee, because I do believe in accountability, I do believe in transparency, and I will, and have done in the past, continue to fight corruption wherever it rears its ugly head. Sorry, I had a bit long on the responses, but I thought let me just give you the facts and not my opinion about the board. Thank you.
All right, colleagues, we're going to take the last round now.
I must go back.
Okay, let's start with the SABC.
Thank you very much. SABC News. Minister, we understand that Tourism SA is the agency that's promoting South Africa as the destination of choice.
Yes.
And the summer season, as you mentioned, is about to begin. So what's going to happen, especially this season, considering that the CEO is at loggerheads with the board and there's all this mess that you are trying to sort out at the beginning of the summer season? Sorry about that.
Yes, I do agree with you, but fortunately, before all of this happened, we had already completed our annual performance plan that was submitted to Parliament. We have also submitted our medium-term development plan for SAT, also submitted to Parliament. And we have also submitted the budget for SAT for the 26-27 financial year. For the first quarter of the this financial year, SAT spent 97% of their budget. So even the Portfolio Committee commented on that. So I will ensure that the implementation of all these plans are implemented without failure, together with the Department of Tourism, and I am confident with the private sector and the commitment that they've also made today, we're going to continue to roll out the plans for the tourism sector. I will absolutely ensure that there is no negative impact on the implementation of the Tourism Growth Partnership Plan. I'll give you that assurance, my brother.
All right, are we all covered? Okay. Thank you so much, colleagues. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a smiling dictator. Thank you, my sister.
Squeeze that in there.
Let me just take my phone.
All right, live visuals there from the Empress Palace, where Minister Patricia De Lille has just concluded her briefing, addressing, of course, the decision to dissolve the SA Tourism Board, a decision she says was not taken arbitrarily, but through consultation with legal counsel, which then gave an opinion on how to address the issue. She essentially says the board acted beyond their purview when they decided to appoint one board member to act in the absence of the chairperson and carry out all the functions of that previous chairperson. She says, of course, that the SA Tourism CEO remains suspended. She was clarifying there because there's been some sort of a narrative that was perpetuated. She revealed that she was protecting the CEO, saying that couldn't be further from the truth.